All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a secret history, one that totally flips what you think you know about the Middle East. We're talking about a time when Iran and Israel, well, they weren't just allies, they were incredibly close partners.
I mean, just look at the difference. Today, what do you see? A shadow war, constant nuclear threats, and just this deep-seated hatred. But back then, it was a totally different world. We're talking secret meetings, intelligence sharing, major economic deals. It's wild to think about how a relationship can do a complete 180.
So, that brings us to the big question, right? How on earth did a friendship that deep just collapse? And not just collapse, but turn into one of the most dangerous, high-stakes rivalries we see in the world today.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock. We need to go back to a Middle East that looked nothing like the one on our maps today.
So picture this. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire is dust, and rising from its ashes is this powerful new idea, Arab nationalism. Now, this was a huge threat for two key outsiders in the region. First, you have Iran, which is Persian, not Arab, and then you have the brand new state of Israel. Both of them looked at this rising tide and thought, uh-oh, we could get completely surrounded and swallowed up.
And you know what they say? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This shared fear led to a really clever strategy from Israel's very first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion. He called it the peripheral doctrine. The idea was genius in its simplicity. If all the countries right next to you are enemies, then you should make friends with the countries on their borders. And who was the biggest, most powerful non-Arab country on that periphery? You guessed it, Iran.
And they didn't waste any time putting this plan into action. I mean, just 2 years after Israel was founded, Iran takes this massive step and basically recognizes Israel as a state. Then comes 1953, a huge turning point. A CIA-backed coup makes sure the pro-American Shah stays in power in Iran. This, of course, pulls Iran way closer into the orbit of the US, and you got it, its ally, Israel. The groundwork was officially laid.
And what happened next was, well, you could call it a golden era. A lot of it was hush-hush, happening behind closed doors, but this partnership was incredibly deep. It wasn't just one thing. It covered everything: intelligence, the military, economics, technology, you name it.
On the security front, this alliance was seriously intense. We're talking about Israel's Mossad not just giving tips to the Shah's notorious secret police, Savak, but actually training them. They were sharing intel all the time on their common enemies. Iranian fighter pilots were training over in Israel. They were even working together to build new, advanced missiles. It was deep. And here's a little story that just perfectly sums up how secret and, frankly, how personal this all was. To keep these meetings off the books, Israel's Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion himself, would fly into Tehran wearing a wig just to sneak past the media. I mean, this tells you it wasn't just some stuffy formal alliance. This was hands-on, top-level, clandestine stuff.
But hey, it wasn't all spies and missile tech. The economic partnership was just as tight. Israel was a pioneer in things like irrigation, so they sent experts to help modernize Iranian farming. You could literally hop on a direct flight between Tehran and Tel Aviv. And get this, even though they didn't have an official embassy, Israel had this huge trade office in Tehran that was, for all intents and purposes, an embassy.
Now, probably the biggest, most ambitious thing they did together was build a massive oil pipeline. See, the Arab nations had an embargo on Israel, no oil for them. So what did Iran and Israel do? They went in 50-50 on this brilliant project. Iranian oil could now flow right across Israel to the Mediterranean, completely bypassing the hostile Suez Canal. It was a total game changer. It gave Israel the energy it needed and gave Iran a direct pipeline to its European customers. Just an absolute geopolitical masterstroke.
And this is where the story gets truly ironic. It's almost hard to believe. So back then, the US had this Atoms for Peace program, and they actually gave Iran its first nuclear reactor. And guess who trained Iran's first nuclear scientists? Israeli scientists. Yeah, let that sink in. The very nuclear program that is at the heart of their conflict today was kickstarted with help from the two countries that now oppose it the most. Just wow. So for decades, this secret partnership was humming along just fine. It was solid. But then, one single event came along and just shattered everything. We're talking, of course, about the Iranian Revolution in 1979. And when things changed, they changed fast. Like whiplash fast. The Shah flees the country. Ayatollah Khomeini returns from exile and creates the Islamic Republic. And almost overnight, that big Israeli mission in Tehran,
it gets stormed. But here's the kicker. They don't just shut it down. They literally hand the keys over to the Palestine Liberation Organization. The PLO's leader, Yasser Arafat, shows up and is welcomed like a hero. The message couldn't have been clearer.
I mean, the entire worldview just flipped upside down. The Shah's whole foreign policy was built around fearing two things: Arab nationalism and Soviet communism. So for him, siding with the US and Israel made perfect sense. But for Khomeini, the main enemies were America, the great Satan, and its closest ally in the region, Israel, which he called the little Satan. Iran's entire place in the world, its entire strategy, was turned completely on its head.
So yeah, that was pretty much the official end of the friendship. But the story, it doesn't quite end there. There were still a couple of weird final twists in the road before this whole relationship was well and truly buried for good.
And this is maybe the wildest twist of all. Believe it or not, even after Khomeini came in and called Israel the enemy, Israel was still secretly selling weapons to Iran. Why? Well, because Iran was in a nasty, bloody war with Iraq. And from Israel's point of view, the old saying held true: the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Weakening Iraq was a bigger priority, at least for a while, than fighting this new ideological war with Iran.
But once that war with Iraq was over, the new regime in Iran got to work erasing every single trace of that old alliance with Israel. The secret police cooperation, the pipeline, all the business deals, gone, gone, and gone. Everything was dismantled. Well, almost everything. There was one last gift left over from that forgotten friendship. And that one remaining piece? It was the nuclear program. The very thing that was once the greatest symbol of how close they were, now became the ultimate symbol of their hatred for each other. This one relic of their old friendship became the seed of the shadow war they're fighting today. And that, right there, is what finally buried the alliance for good.
When you boil it all down, their entire secret history was built on one simple idea: having a common enemy. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? In a place like the Middle East, where things are always changing, is there any shared threat out there, anything at all, that could be big enough to one day push these two enemies back together again?